playing with
Yeah, my bad, bro. You gotta be solid.
your ass if you wrong, huh?
Yeah, yo, dog.
I'm saying we don't play like that.
The escalating East Side beef between rapper 42 Dugg and Sada Baby has taken a deadly turn. With more and more people getting involved, law enforcement on standby, there's no telling what's coming next. And the community is afraid. Very afraid. But how did the beef between two emerging East Side rappers even begin? While neither Dugg and Sada are strangers to the gangbanging lifestyle, and both have had previous run-ins with the law, they'd never crossed paths up until now. Communities in Detroit City wish they hadn't, because now they constantly have to look over their shoulder as a full-blown gang war is expected to take place. So, how did it all start? How did these two rappers go from running in completely different circles to being investigated for a string of crimes against one another? One crime, though, stands out for all the wrong reasons. When the rapper's own strap was used to rob him. First things first, introductions. Fans know him as 42 Dugg, but he was born Dion Marquise Hayes in Detroit, Michigan. The rapper grew up in the Denby neighborhood on the east side, where he attended high school, but later dropped out. This was around the time he started his affiliations with the 6 Mile 42 Hustle Boys, a faction of the Crips. We don't know when exactly Dugg started hanging around gangs in the Denby area, but we do know it was when he was still a minor. Conviction records show that a 15-year-old Dugg was arrested for carjacking and felony firearms possession in 2010. The rapper was sentenced to 4 years, but he ended up being locked up for 6. Why is that? Because the gangbanging lifestyle followed him inside his cell, and a short time after his incarceration, he had an altercation with another inmate that left both requiring a trip to the ER. This added another 2.5 years to Dugg's sentence, but ironically, he was better for it. It was around this time that the young rapper actually started taking a career in rap seriously. Sure, he'd grown up listening to Yo Gotti, someone he'd eventually work with too, but this was something he believed he could pursue outside, and he did. His first track, Mama I'm Sorry, got everyone's attention. The single was released soon after he was released from prison, and that's when he started hanging around other rappers, hoping to break into the industry. Well, in 2017, he met Lil Baby, the rapper who'd change his life for good. The two met over a dice game, and Lil Baby was impressed with Dugg's unique style. Not only did he sign him onto his own record label, 4 Pockets Full, but he also got him in a room with one of his idols, Yo Gotti. Like Lil Baby, Yo Gotti also thought Dugg was on his way to making millions, and he wanted in on it. The rapper's idol made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and in 2018, a short while after he'd been released from prison, Dugg found himself being signed onto 2 major record labels. Dugg had the chance to become something greater than he'd ever imagined, and sure, he did manage to release several hits, got his features in many albums, and was even named Billboard's Rookie of the Year. But as his popularity went up, so did his troubles, and this is where we're going to pivot and talk about Sada Baby.
So no comment. Okay.
Yeah, no comment, man.
Before he was Sada Baby, he was Quesada Aaron Sorrell. Born in Detroit, Michigan, Sada Baby grew up in the Regent Park neighborhood. His path didn't cross with Dugg until much later, and it's not like it ever would have been while they were young. You see, Dugg was born and raised amid gang violence. He said it himself that there was no escaping it where he grew up. But things were a lot different for Sada Baby, who grew up under better circumstances and was even a part of the church choir until the age of 11. Sometime later, Sada moved to Washington, D.C., where he decided to pursue a career, not in rap, but in basketball. Yup, he had the skill and the build for it, but never really got his big break. So, after that dream was a bust, he switched over to a career in rap, and that's when Quesada Aaron became Sada Baby. This was back in 2013, when Dugg was still serving out his prison sentence. Sada was an emerging rapper in the East Side, and he received just about enough success after winning a 2016 rap battle to get his name out there in Detroit. That was when he caught Grizzley's attention, who signed him onto his record label, Grizzley Gang.
It's all about how motherfuckers perceive shit. Half of the shit that get commented and get said on wherever it gets said, it won't never get said to me because it just won't. You know?
Now, that's a name you need to remember for the entirety of this video. It's a name that'll come up more times than a few. Shortly after signing on with Grizzley, Sada started hanging around the 7 Mile Bloods. That's right, as weird as it might sound, the rapper didn't join a gang until he was 22. He'd stayed away from that lifestyle for most of his life, only to cozy up to the Bloods when he found fame. It'll come as no surprise that the Crips and the Bloods aren't fans of one another. As such, Dugg and Sada were now part of rival gangs. Sure, it meant the obvious. they wouldn't trust one another, but they wouldn't have been the first two rappers in history to at least be civil with one another. By the time Dugg was released and started making a name for himself with the streets and STFU, Sada was close behind him with the viral hit, Block's Party. The two continued focusing on their careers, and everything was going well until it wasn't. Remember Grizzley? He played a major role in their feud, even if many believe that he never intended to do that. You probably know Grizzley as the guy behind the viral sensation, First Day Out. The song was released on, ironically, his first day out of prison after he'd been arrested for a string of burglaries around Michigan State University. While he was a student, there studying finance. His career path took a turn when he was caught for robberies and sentenced to prison. That was also where he started his gang afflictions and realized he had the innate ability to put out a good verse. 2 million people who streamed the song within the first 2 weeks of its release thought so too, and one of them was LeBron James. The NBA player's reaction to the song was enough for it to make its way to the charts and make Grizzley a pretty big name around Detroit. So, we know that he started his record label pretty soon enough and signed with a bunch of artists. One was obviously Baby, and the other was 42 Twins. No, you heard that right. We're talking about another rapper named 42 Twins here. However, besides the name, another thing he had in common with Dugg was his affiliation with the 6 Mile 42 Hustle Boys. Grizzley released a song with Twins before he did with Sada Baby. Grizzley stayed relatively far enough away from the gang scene in Detroit and didn't have any ties to either the Crips or the Bloods. Why was Grizzley's association with Sada Baby such a big deal for Twins? You'd be surprised how far back his hatred for the 7 Mile Bloods goes, and it has a lot to do with his brother. That's right, the 7 Mile Bloods were never friendly with the 6 Mile Hustle Boys, but both gangs learned how to coexist with one another. Yes, there'd be escalations here and there, but nothing ever as drastic as what happened in 2014. To give you some context, Detroit PD was on high alert when Bloods and Crips members posted presumed hit lists online. What had happened was that in July 2014, 23-year-old twins Michael and Martez Davis arrived at the Lawton parole office for a morning meeting with a parole agent. The twins had identical convictions for armed robbery. The Davis brothers rapped together under the name 42 Twins. Before they left, they crossed paths with Billy Arnold, the alleged leader of the 7 Mile Bloods. After spotting the twins, Arnold called another member, Cocaine Sonny. The Davis twins climbed into a car with 2 other hustle boys, including Dwan Neff Page. The chase ended with Michael Davis being shot in the chest, and Page was struck in the left eye. He lingered in a coma for several weeks before dying. Still, when he uploaded a picture of himself and Sada Baby on his Instagram account, promoting their upcoming release and talking about his friend in general, it was enough to rub Twins off the wrong way. The rapper uploaded that same picture onto his socials with the caption, "Don't get your car flipped leaving off that block." In not so many words, this was a threat, and Sada didn't take too kindly to it. Grizzley didn't either, for that matter. However, he continued to associate with Twins and Sada long after that. It wasn't until Sada broke off their working relationship that the feud between him and 42 kicked off. And yes, now we're getting to the part where 42 Dugg got involved. So, Sada is essentially on his own at this point. Grizzley and he had a falling out over business decisions, and he's just doing his own thing. Twins has made it known that he doesn't like the rapper. No love lost. Sada doesn't care for him either. So how did Dugg get involved? By association. 42 and 42 released a diss track that targeted Sada at an event right before he was supposed to go on. More people started getting involved, and it didn't help that both sides had links to rivaling gangs. Still, things didn't take a turn for the worst until Dugg decided to escalate a feud he wasn't originally a part of by starting a rumor about Sada.
I had that pole and I was gonna blow your bitch down. You knew that. You knew that.
To be fair, it's he said situation, and it might just be that way for who knows how long. The fact is that Dugg claims that he and his buddies jumped Sada and then robbed him using his own weapon. Is this claim true? Not according to the rapper who was allegedly robbed. It's not. Sada has denied this claim, saying that it's just another one of Dugg's publicity stunts. 42. Twins' role in the feud is now over, or, well, he's now become an insignificant part of it. At this point, it's just Dugg going at it against Sada all on his own. Was he out of line? Possibly, according to fans. Some believed that he had no right to escalate the whole thing when it didn't involve him to begin with. Then, of course, there were people on Dugg's side who claimed that Sada was no victim here either. He'd purposefully provoked Dugg by shading the rapper in his verse on Big Sean's Friday Night Cypher. The rumors started spreading like wildfire, and it seemed like there was someone asking Sada about it every single day. Apparently, it wasn't the fact that he got robbed, it was that they used his own strap to do it that had everyone in stitches. To be fair, Sada might have thrown shade at Dugg, but he tried to avoid the beef getting messy by actively avoiding him. Cue Doughboy and his role in the whole thing. Now, Doughboy is also an emerging rapper from the East Side, and he rolled in the same circles as Sada and Dugg, although it was obvious that he was more of Dugg's friend than anyone else. That was just about enough for Sada Baby to keep his distance. So, when Doughboy started gaining traction, Sada's fans started spamming his comment section on Instagram, begging the two of them to collaborate. The rapper Sada took time out to personally reply to several of those spam comments that it was never going to happen. He did that once, maybe twice, and then a couple of other times before Doughboy was the one who replied back, prompting Sada to tell everyone the real reason. He wrote, "Tell him why not." This was followed by a not-so-subtle story on Instagram where he all but called Sada Baby a phony. He wrote, "If you let fans to provoke you to keep speaking on expletive, you should have been left alone, then you a goofy." Right, Sada was feuding with 3 people all at once. Grizzley wasn't speaking to him after their aunt/manager JB decided on being Sada's manager exclusively. Dugg was throwing shade at him for just about everything under the sun. And now Doughboy was out here telling everyone that Sada's just mad that he got humiliated when he got robbed.
You just gonna keep talking, huh? You just gonna keep talking knowing damn well you know what I know, and you gonna keep talking. Alright, bitch.
The feud continued with a few passive comments here and there, but by the end of 2021, it seemed like Sada had resolved at least 2 of his feuds. In the same social media post, he squashed his beef with Grizzley and Doughboy. The rapper posted a picture of the 3 of them, all smiles. Previously, he'd said that he and Grizzley had resolved their issues too, and while they could never go back to being the way that they once were, they were working on mending their relationship. All that was left now was his feud with Dugg, and that's one that's only escalated in recent years. Before we move on and talk about how the 2 of them can't even stand to look at each other anymore, plus Dugg's arrest, we have to talk about a conspiracy theory that it's all for show. Courtesy of fans from both sides, there's a running theory right now that the 2 rappers are friends. While that might be a little far-fetched given all the blows, most fans believe that their feud is escalated for entertainment. That might be because of a video where Sada Baby talks about the time he saved 42 Dugg from getting beaten up by none other than Offset himself. Remember how we talked about Dugg getting his life turned upside down, or right side up in this case, when he met and signed with Lil Baby. The 2 had met at a high-stakes dice game, something that Dugg is known to frequent. It was at one of those events that Sada and Offset just so happened to be there too. Here's what went down according to Sada himself. Yes, he was already at the high-stakes game where Dugg had allegedly been acting up all night. Now Sada said that he was argumentative that whole night, but not with him. That's something that the rappers maintained throughout his beef with Dugg, even when he had beef with Grizzley. It's that he's perfectly capable of being civil with the other guy, even when they're in a room together. He'll never be the first to throw a punch. Anyway, Offset comes in with a friend of his, and Dugg started acting up with them too. Lil Baby was there, and he had it up to here with Dugg too. According to Sada Baby, everyone was just about done with Dugg. Offset and his friend, however, were looking to set him straight, and that's when Sada realized he needed to step in. The rapper claimed that he pulled Offset aside and told him that he would never be a 42 Dugg fan, but he owed the guy as someone from Detroit to keep him from getting beat. The fact that Dugg hasn't denied that story makes everyone believe that it's probably true. Now, big props to Sada Baby for sticking up for someone he knew from his city, but does that sound like someone who's beefing with the same guy he's protecting to you? It doesn't to a lot of their fans, which is why they believe the whole feud is made up.
That's some shit that's like honestly above me and his rank on some neighborhood shit, you feel me? Like he couldn't tell you my name unless he Googled it. You know what I'm saying? And I couldn't tell you his. You know what I'm saying? Like me and that don't got like no personal problems with each other. It's just my side and his side, you know what I'm saying?
The feud is, whether fans would like to believe it or not, very real. However, it's 42 Dugg apparently, who's been itching for a fight or some sort of reacting from Sada Baby. That's because, according to fan theories on Reddit, Dugg is so engrossed in the gang mentality that he thoroughly believes it's his mission to destroy anyone from the blood side, and that's Sada Baby. Sure, Sada isn't a fan of Dugg's either, or there are reports that indicate he asks for his music to be pulled from the playlists whenever he's at a club. However, Sada isn't the one releasing diss tracks against him. In fact, in his biggest hit to date, Whole Lotta Choppas, Sada doesn't mention any of the people he's allegedly had beef with.
I know for a fact, if it was as deep as would want to make it seem, nigga, the multiple times we done been around each other within arm's length, something would have happened.
Yeah.
You feel me? Me nor him did a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Plus, the incident where Dugg was this close to being beaten up by Offset made fans question if he'd ever return that favor if he saw Sada in trouble. The overwhelming answer was that he wouldn't. If anything, he'd be one of the people to jump him too.
I'm going through niggas, you dig what I'm saying? I ain't taking no high road. Fuck wrong, we ain't getting here taking no high road.
42. Dugg has been criticized by people in the East Side music industry for trying to bring back gangsta rap from the days of NWA. Unlike the legendary rap group though, Dugg's antics haven't gotten him ant fame, only notoriety. The guy's been in and out of prison ever since he was 15. Besides the 6-year stint that he did back in 2010, he's been locked up again a few times since his release in 2017. The first time came in 2019, when Dugg was found in violation of his probation. One of the terms was that he wasn't allowed near firearms at all. This meant that, besides surrendering the illegal weapons that he had on him back then, he wasn't allowed to go near one until his probation was up. Still, guess who was found in a gun range in 2019? Dugg got away with a slap on the wrist and a $90,000 fine. You'd think this would stop him from getting into trouble again, or at least not this soon again. You'd be wrong. The guy spent 6 months in a prison camp in 2020 for when he had police chasing him over something as simple as a traffic stop. Fans believe that Dugg is slowly getting out of control. They'd be right to think that too. In the ever-growing list of people who have it out for him, because he's been picking fights left and right, one of those names would be OMB Peasies. What happened was that back in February 2021, Dugg and Roddy Ricch were shooting for a music video in Atlanta when all of a sudden a commotion broke out. Before anyone could grasp what was going on, 3 men on the shoot location were found injured and had to be rushed to the hospital. It was then that everyone figured out there'd been a shooting. But who were the targets? The 3 men who were injured were transported to the hospital in stable condition and made full recoveries. However, the cops had a hard time believing that they'd been the real targets. It seemed like someone wanted to send a message, and they wanted to send it to the guys in charge. That would be either 42 Dugg or Rich. The obvious answer was Dugg because of his gang affiliations. A few months later, the cops claimed they'd caught the guy, OMB Peasy. Not to spoil it for you, but the rapper released when the charges against him were dismissed. That wasn't before he'd made bail on arraignment, had to surrender his passport, and wear an ankle monitor. But why were the charges dismissed? Better yet, why'd he shoot at Dugg? Whether it was because of gang rivalries or just a personal vendetta against Dugg, we might never know. But we do know that the rapper was the one to drop the charges after he realized that it made him look weak. Fans claim that a whole lot of the rapper's personality relies on him appearing like he's the one in control in the East Side. Then came his latest arrest in April 2023. The rapper was sentenced to 1 year in prison for failure to report for the gun charges from 2020. Dugg was later released after serving 18 months incarcerated. The day he was released from the penitentiary, he had a silver Rolls Royce pick him up from the gate. It was clear that he thrived on that lifestyle, announcing the release of his debut album within the next few days. But what do you guys think? Could 42 Dugg and Sada Baby have really committed to the fake feud for so long? Long enough for other rappers to get involved? Or was it really just an act to boost their reputation within the gangs? The only thing we know for sure is that their rivalry is far from over. And with Dugg's debut album coming up, there's no saying how many bridges he's about to burn. If you enjoyed this video, click on the boxes playing on your screen to watch similar content.